Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast with Sterling Holmes and Matt Connor. Wait, check that. Matt Connor on vacation. Daniel Harms, film analyst for RGR Football, as well as fantasy football astronauts, will be joining us today. First off, Daniel, how are you doing, my man?
Oh, I'm doing all right. It's been a tough day. My wife left for another little week trip down in Louisiana, so I get the little one for the next 7 or 5 days by myself
Mm.
once again. Not the month that I had to do, but I make do with what I can. She's preoccupied at the moment, but I'm sure she'll make a guest appearance every now and then.
So if you don't know Daniel, he is a incredible film analyst. You can follow him on Twitter at in harm's way 19. Great breakdowns, great videos. We also have him on my radio show all the time on ESPN Kansas City. So I told Daniel before this, you can cuss. We have a counter that a lot of people like to listen to. It's the fuck bomb, F bomb counter. So if you drop a word, it's okay. You're fine. We don't have to bleep it on here. Look, dude, we drink beer on this show. We're fine.
You do drink beer.
We're cruising. A lot of things I want to get into. First thing I want to touch on is the Tyreek Hill situation, the podcast that he is dropping, the teaser that he posed. I feel silly bringing this up, right? Because it's something where I'm like, Tyreek Hill's in Miami. He's a Dolphin. Mm-hmm. He is no longer on this team. And my main thought is, I don't care. I don't care because he is no longer a part of the Kansas City Chiefs. I can respect and appreciate everything that he has done. And at some point, I'm still like, he wants to do his thing. He wants to promote his podcast. Great for him. But it's been such a uproar. People keep talking about it. They keep asking me, people in the media, they keep asking everyone, well, what do you make of this? So I feel like we at least have to touch on this. What was your reaction with this whole Tyreek Hill podcast teaser?
Yeah, it was like, okay, Tyreek's got a podcast he's going to do. It's a good name for it. I guess it makes sense. Things have to be said. I feel like that's a good thing for athletes to be doing, talking about things that you think need to be said. And then we get the whole lead into it. And the biggest thing about the whole issue was me like, okay, Tyreek's not addressing anything. They cut it off right before he could say anything at all. And it was just the host answering one of the most dumbass questions I've ever heard in my entire life. When you watch the Chiefs play, we all know the offense flows through two guys, Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. That's it. That's what it is. It's what it's been. Even into the Alex Smith days, he was throwing bombs at Tyreek Hill down the sideline. You'd think he was like this guy that asked the question. I don't know what was scripted. I don't know whether it was Tyreek's intention, which I would imagine it probably was, because we do know now that he addressed the question. He said that his stats weren't, what's the word they used?
Well, he also said he liked getting people's panties in a bunch. He likes the drama. Yeah, right? He wants to pump those podcast numbers up, right? We know what he's doing here.
Oh, yeah. There's a huge everybody. And the way that it happened, a lot of people were taken by huge surprise by the Tyreek Hill trade and the whole drumming up to it. Obviously, the Chiefs come out later and say, well, we did offer him a contract. And then when basically I'm under the impression that his agent was hearing rumblings about Devontae Adams, and he was like, hey, yo, Tyreek, chill. Just wait, because you're going to get an offer from Kansas City, and you're going to say no, and then you're going to get the bag, which he did. Good for him. I'll never, ever tell athletes not to get your bag. You play football for a short period of time. The elite of the elite deserve to get that bag, period. But he knew after the uproar that happened with the Chiefs fans in Kansas City that all he needed to do was to drum up a little bit of intrigue for this podcast reveal of his. And what better way to do that than to ask a stupid ass question that everyone and their mother will have an opinion about. So it's great publicity for him. Good job on doing that. And I mean, whether it was a script or not, the question was stupid, period, because we all know that his stats were not. He got the ball. He was funneled the football, period. End of story.
This is about the last I'm going to touch on Tyreek Hill. He's no longer a Kansas City Chief. I think you and I differ a little bit here, but to me, it's also like the Tony Gonzalez situation. I'm over it. Yeah. I'm over the whole Tony G going to Atlanta. I understand why he did it. It did not work out for Tony Gonzalez. I think some of his context, some of his words were taken out of context.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a big Tony G fan. Still like Tyreek Hill, but he's no longer in Kansas City, so I don't feel like we have to keep touching on it. Andy Reid, though, was not very happy.
Oh,
Andy
no.
Reid,
Oh, man.
when asked, calling folks shock jocks, I think it was kind of disrespectful, personally, what Andy Reid said regarding this. If you want to be mad at someone, be mad at Tyreek Hill. Don't be mad at people in the media who, when this is a story, when this is something that we are getting asked about, don't just dismiss it. If you want to say, and in the question that was asked, he had an out. Andy Reid was basically asked, I don't know if you have heard what Tyreek Hill has said. He could have said, I haven't heard it.
Yep.
He could have said that instead of calling folks out, calling them shock jocks. I thought that was very, very poor taste from Andy Reid. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I also, maybe he had like seen a little bit about it. Maybe he knew that there was some uproar, but he didn't know what it was. So coming at it from Andy Reid's perspective, if he takes it like you do, he's in Miami, I don't want to talk about it anymore, period. Like, I just don't have any interest in it. Then there's a little bit of intrigue with, well, you guys are just trying to get a rise out of me. And they did. They effectively got a rise out of Andy Reid.
He could have said that, though, and I'd have respected it. If he would have said Tyreek's in Miami, he is no longer a member of this team. We respect what he's done. I'm okay with that. But calling folks out for questions that a lot of people wanted to know about, and we know Andy's heard that. We know Andy Reid heard Tyreek Hill's quote. Okay?
Oh, for sure. For sure. He wouldn't have gotten mad about it if he didn't.
Exactly. Before we go further, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor. The Arrowhead Addict podcast is brought to you by the Kansas City Beer Company. KC Beer Co. is the largest locally owned brewery in Kansas City and the only brewery in KC to focus on German beer styles. Nice. They brew their beer according to the German purity law of 1516, using only 4 ingredients: malt, hops, water, yeast. I mean, guys, we've been doing this every single week. KC Beer Co. is incredible. I'm drinking the Helles Lager. It's my favorite beer from KC Beer Co. outside of the Carolator, which I'm pretty sure you can only get at KC Beer Co. We talk about it all the time, but it's because it's true. They make the best beer in Kansas City, the best beer, period. They win awards in Germany for their German-style beers. No American beer companies are doing that. So if you have a chance, get some KC beer. And again, we always love it when you guys tag us, post it on Twitter. It means a lot to us. It means a lot to them. It helps keep this partnership going. So thank you, guys. Let's get back to it. I kind of want to touch on the defense first. I really want to touch on the defense, and I want to start with edge. Is this the plan? Is this what the Chiefs are going to roll with, or is there something waiting in the wings? Do you think a potential trade is in the works? Do you think that they're waiting for roster cuts to get down and hopefully a veteran that can make an impact on this team becomes available? Because let's be real here. The Chiefs' weakest position group is edge. Even though they are taking someone else's scraps, that scrap could still be an upgrade for this unit. What are your thoughts here?
So let's go back to last year, where effectively they decided to try out Chris Jones at defensive end. That tells me that they're pretty comfortable with their situation right now, that they don't have any plans as of now to really try to get somebody. I know that there's other players out there, some guys that might get cut around training camp time when cuts come down. You have some swirlings about trades. The biggest guy out there I think that would make an impact and actually could help would be Ryan Kerrigan. You could bring him in and actually help mold a guy who I think is likened to him a lot in George Karlaftis. It would make a lot of sense to get a guy you can mold him into. Maybe you try to get the best out of him that way. But this is June 7th right now, and Kansas City's just like, nah, we're good. And that makes me feel a little uncomfortable. We've seen how bad the defensive ends position specifically has been at getting pressure, consistent pressure, and getting home to the quarterback. While they had better pressure numbers last year than you would think based on their total sacks converted, it's not good. They're unable to really get off those blocks. Frank Clark has to have like a renaissance this year. Basically, they've said we're putting our chips in a rookie, 3 really unknown guys. Mike Dana is a really good rotational player, can give you some juice on rushing rundowns. He's more of an effort-based defensive end in the pass rush department. Then you got Joshua Kendo, a 5th-round pick last year, Malik Herring, an undrafted free agent who was dealing with injuries all of last year, recovering. And then you have Frank Clark. Like, what are they going to do? This is a throw your hands up in the air situation. You're hoping that Cullen can come in and maybe get the best out of them. He can scheme up that defensive front a little bit, maybe. But you're really putting all of your chips on Frank Clark being the best he's ever been in Kansas City. And what do we have to say that that's going to happen?
Yeah, there's so many unknowns here, so many things that have to go right if this is the way Kansas City is choosing to go. I don't know if this screams that they have faith in Malik Herring and faith in Joshua Kando.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this means they think Frank Clark with a smaller contract, right, with the restructure, with what he's doing, if this means they think the pressure is off him and it allows him to perform better, maybe without the bullseye on his back. I don't see how that would really make much of a difference. And maybe that's the way the Chiefs are feeling. I just don't feel comfortable with what is currently happening. I really like George K. You and I have kind of gone back and forth over the past, I guess, ever since the draft on George Karlaftis. I think the main reason why I'm enthused by him is he's a day one, game one player. He's a guy you can plug and place, and you don't have to worry about it. A guy with a high upside, you might have to wait, I don't know, half a season, a full season before you get any impact. Chiefs need someone now, and George K is that guy. I'm just kind of confused on which way they're going to go. Does Leo Chanel, does he get any run at edge? I think that could be a potential possibility, especially if you're going to go, you know what, Frank Clark at this point, he can set the edge. He's first and second down. George K is playing 3 downs. Maybe if you want Dana on first and second down, then Leo Chanel comes in on rushing downs to get after the quarterback. Is that something you think could be in the works here?
If that's going to happen, we're counting on Steve Spagnuolo to do something he's never done, which is use an athletic player at defensive end who's not necessarily your set the edge and really collapse the pocket kind of guy. From his tape at Wisconsin, they blitzed him a ton. It was basically, you can get to your spot in some of your zone drops, but what we want you to do is go after the quarterback. So whether that was blitzing through the A gaps, whether that was coming off the edge, he has multiple reps, in my opinion, to show that there's some actual bend there. There's some technique that he could use as a pass rusher. But if you take him away from being a true linebacker and really split that time, in my opinion, you're doing him a disservice, because maybe next year is different. Maybe they need him at linebacker, and now he has to kind of relearn everything on top of that. And if they have an injury at linebacker and he's forced to now be a guy who is off ball basically the whole time, say Willie Gay gets hurt, obviously knock on wood, we're just not going to have any of that nonsense.
Come on, Daniel.
You have to figure he's probably the guy that would slide in right there as the next athletic guy. Okay, that's what the profile he presents. And if you're having him basically learn edge most of the season, his mind isn't in one place the whole time. So I think that it would benefit him to, while he should learn some pass rush techniques and stuff like that, keep him as that Sam backer, blitz him from time to time, but also really develop that coverage aspect, because I think that he could be the next guy on nickel downs if he really rounds out that coverage part of his game next to a Willie Gay, and or maybe even next to Nick Bolton if they want to do 3 linebackers. It's going to be interesting with how they use him, but he does have, in my opinion, pass rush upside off the edge, because there's technique there. There's also some bend and some athletic ability along with his explosiveness. So I think that there's a possibility they want to do that. But again, we're counting on Steve Spagnuolo altering his plan. And in my opinion, by selecting George Karlaftis in the first round, he does not have any plans to alter the way he sees this defense.
Who are you more enthused about? Malik Herring, Joshua Kando, potentially someone else? But as far as the developmental pass rushers go, is there one that stands out to you? I know I see a lot of people like Chris on Facebook right now saying YouTuber saying don't sleep on Malik Herring. I've seen a lot of people who have been very excited about Malik, but I feel like we haven't heard a lot from the Chiefs side of this. What are your thoughts here?
He's the unknown, the most unknown player at defensive end right now. You kind of know, at least you've seen some reps from Joshua Kando. You have a little bit to go off of there. Obviously, he got hurt last season and was unable to really make it back. Mike Dana is what he is. I don't think you're going to get a bunch out of him. So you're not looking at a great season from him. Malik Herring was probably going to be a day 2 guy coming out of Georgia, about 280. So he's a big physical dude. He actually doesn't look 280. He's like, Evan, you guys seen pictures of Evan Neal at the combine, 330 pounds. Dude looks like he's maybe like 270 at most, but they hide it. They wear it differently. Malik Herring wears his weight very well and it's distributed. So you're hoping that he can have some of that ability to pressure off the edge, but it's a huge unknown. And really, when it comes down to, he's more of a power player. So we're also putting our chips in another basket with Herring, that he's going to be more of probably what Frank Clark was at his peak. The guy who can really set the edge, collapse that pocket, and then disengage from these tackles. I'm personally a little bit more hopeful that Joshua Kando has a better season, because from what I saw on his film, there was more athletic upside. And while he didn't know what he was doing at all while he was at Florida State, he was just kind of out there and running them around and kind of just go after the quarterback kind of situations. He flashes times where he gets it all right. And when you find those clips of guys just getting it right with the first step explosion, the technique, the manipulation tactics, and the kind of a little bit of bend and cornering that Kando has, that's what you can get a little bit of excited about. But it's hard to really know, again, with these projections. He's a 5th-round pick when you have developmental stages that are completely distorted at Florida State. Like, look at Janoris Robinson. He was another hugely athletic defensive end who just didn't develop there. And then, right, we haven't heard from him. Kando was his teammate there as well. So they haven't done a good job of developing guys. And those are key parts of playing in the NFL, is that development in college. So it's really hard to know.
The Chiefs, to me, this upcoming season, you kind of mentioned, the versatility is way different than in past years. I think there's a lot of different guys that you can look at and say, well, Leo Chanel, for example, can get after the quarterback. Chris Jones can do a lot of different things. Malik Herring might be able to play inside. Willie Gay Jr., Nick Bolton, they all have different roles that they can excel in. Brian Cook, right? The safety from Cincinnati.
Yep.
He can do a lot of different things that you're like, okay, L'Jarius Sneed can play both inside, outside, and can occasionally get after the quarterback, which we saw.
Yep.
Are the Chiefs going with a more kind of like the Golden State Warriors in basketball, right? Like positionless. I know it's not going to be the same because football, basketball, there's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
You're not going to – there's too many different things and scenarios. You can't put a safety at defensive end or at D tackle and expect to have results. But do you think this is more of a positionless defense that we'll see this upcoming season?
I don't think so, mostly because we've seen what Spags wants to do with specific players. I think Brian Cook is going to fill that third safety role that they want. I think that Leo Chanel is a Sam right off the start, and then you can learn to really move him around and blitz him. So what Spags wants to do is kind of play this. While it's positionless, it's not positionless, because they have specific roles in his defense and his style. Like, go back to Kendall Fuller when they brought him over from Washington. He was a corner. Spags is like, yeah, but no, you're really more of a guy I want to drop down and be a third safety. And that worked out for him. So they have players that fit specific roles. And I think that they selected those guys strategically on purpose that fit exactly what Steve Spagnuolo wants to do in the defense he wants to run. It would benefit them to play more fluidly, to play a little bit more cover 3, to play a little bit more cover 6, cover 7, things like this that would actually help use all the different defensive backs that they have. But as we know, change is not within Steve Spagnuolo's range of outcomes. I mean, they did try Chris Jones at defensive end. Then they were like, no, let's put you back where we know you're good. And guess what? He started to be really good again. Like these things that they work, and they have this. He has an understanding now that with specific players that he likes. And I truly think that Brian Cook is going to bring what Dan Sorensen brought early on in his career with the hard hitting, the downhill run ability to get in the run game. But he's got more coverage ability than I think Dan Sorensen ever had, and more versatility. So I'm excited about that, because you can really use some of these safeties in a positionless way. You can rotate all 3 of them in and out. And then you also got, Lonnie Johnson, who has some safety experience, but he's also got corner experience. So the secondary room is going to be interesting how it plays out, because there's so many different matchups that they could bring in. And so from that aspect, I think you could definitely assume that while it's positionless, it's not at the same time.
The physicality of this defense is going to be something we have not seen in Kansas City for a long time. This feels like a shift. I've talked about it before, and not just with the offensive line. That's where I think it started with the finesse players. I'm not saying finesse is bad. Mitchell Schwartz was a finesse right tackle, and he was one of, if not the best right tackle in football during his peak, right? I'm not saying finesse is bad, but this team is getting more physical, and defensively, it's very, very noticeable. They had a lot of investment at linebacker. Leo Chanel writes death row on his arm. That's a psychopath move. You love to see. I mean, okay, right? That is not a finesse. That's a guy with no bend, but a guy who gets after the quarterback just being a bully, right? This is a Brian Cook. That's a big safety, a physical safety, a dude who can lay the wood. Are you liking the Chiefs going from a more finesse style of team to bringing, or at least trying to bring on paper, a more physical approach?
Yeah, if you remember the Super Bowl run on defense, they had to kick up their physicality a lot. And I think that was part of the reason they brought Frank Clark and Matthew in, because at that point in their careers, they were all about talking that talk and then walking the walk. Because Matthew would come in and he would, for a guy his size, he would make those hits too. Clark, they all talked up that run defense against Derrick Henry. They did a great job of shutting him down in that playoff run. Absolutely great job. And then they won the Super Bowl. And then they were like, wait a minute. We don't have to do this anymore. Like, we don't have to play that hard. That was no fun. It felt like they didn't have much fun doing it because they didn't bring it back. It's not just a talk. It's a mentality. These young guys have all of that mentality, and they have the need to really prove themselves, because you and I have talked about George Karlaftis. I guarantee you he's heard there's not much upside there. There's not a whole lot there outside of just a power guy. That can drive him to be not just an effort player, but a guy who can improve in his first season a lot. And, when you're young and the defense around you is taking shape, because right now it's in flux. There's a lot of different things that can happen with this defense, and they can make an impact on this defense with youth, speed, and physicality, because you have Justin Reed now with Juan Thornhill, Brian Cook. That's a very young, fast, downhill kind of safety group that has multiple different aspects. You bring in Trent McDuffie, who, for being a smaller guy, has no issues coming down to the run game and being physical and attacking and tackling. He loves to do that. Also, Leo Chanel, the dude, just he's like a wind-up toy. You just wind him up and then just say, go get the quarterback. He's going to go hit somebody. So the way that they're developing the defense, in my opinion, is going to set them up to establish an early mentality of, look, we're going to go balls to the wall. Whether we miss some tackles early in the season, that's probably going to happen. You're going to probably see quite a few missed tackles, learning the game and adjusting to those angles and the speed of it. But come mid-season, you are going to see some absolute bombshells of hits. And I cannot wait until the speed of the game catches up to these guys, because it's going to inject you not just speed, but they're going to have fun. And that should spread to just everybody in the defense. So I'm excited about the future of this defense with the youth, the speed, and physicality they brought in.
Well, let's go there then. How much should we expect in terms of growing pains defensively with all of this youth, with all of the changes? Do you think it's going to be a typical Steve Spagnuolo slow start, or do you think that some of the athleticism early on can at least make up for the maybe lack of not knowing where to be exactly? Maybe, Dan Sorensen was supposed to be the typical nowhere to be guy, and he was getting torched. Maybe Justin Reed, maybe Brian Cook don't know where to be as well, and then in a more different, more difficult schematic defense. But because they are so athletic, they can make up for some of those early season struggles.
So you remember the Eagles debacle last year, right? Week 5 or week 4 was it? Which one? Either one of those things, where it was a shootout when it shouldn't have been. They were just scoring touchdowns left and right. That's kind of how I'm envisioning the first half, or the first month-ish of the Chiefs season. The defense is going to have some struggles. You have lots of young guys that are going to be playing key portions. I believe they completely drafted 3 starters. Well, really 4 starters if you consider the third safety a starter. They drafted 4 guys that are going to play significant snaps this year. They brought in a new, Justin Reed is still new. He's still a young guy. It's his brand new system. There's going to be a lot of times where you're just thinking, what the fuck? Like, you're just like, what is he doing? And we're all going to get hot about it, like we all did last year. I know multiple people were calling for Steve Spagnuolo's job. They were. And I have my own feelings about Steve Spagnuolo and his inability to change. But there's one thing that we know about Steve Spagnuolo defenses is that by the end of the season, they are running on all cylinders. They figure everything out. They match up the guys that they want. They finally started Juan Thornhill at free safety. And look, the big plays kind of took a downturn. Like they just didn't happen as much. So as much as it is a feeling out process for the rookies, it's even more of a feeling out process for the staff, trying to figure out exactly where the best fit for each player is. And around, I'm going to shoot week 7 because there's a lot to go through. Like I said, with probably 4 guys contributing very early in their rookie seasons, there's going to be a lot to parse out and a lot to figure out. But I think by week 7, you're going to see everybody in their prime position. And I'm hoping that with the new vocal majority that they have, I think that Reed's going to be a huge impact on that. I think that Nick Bolton can take a step forward in his leadership as well. You help all of that and really can, as much as Anthony Hitchens didn't, in my opinion, I don't think he was the best leader in that defensive locker room. I think that they can have a more impact with youth, and you have your leaders on defense already. They're set in stone. So they're veterans. They should be able to do that.
I almost agree with Mr. Schwump more. He says 2/3 of the season before the defense really figures it out.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think I might
Can't
be
argue.
leaning that way too. So full transparency, my initial before the season starts, we're middle of the offseason. The Chiefs going 11-6. I think the AFC West is going to be very, very difficult. I think there's going to be a lot of splits. I think the Chiefs win the AFC West, but I don't think it's going to be some easy road by any means. The Chiefs' schedule is brutal, and there are so many new pieces for Kansas City. Doesn't matter. As long as you are, like you said, firing on full cylinders when the games matter most in the playoffs, that's what really matters. And typically, Steve Spagnuolo defenses have done that. I do think, though, the athleticism will shine through at times early on. While there will be guys out of place, at times we will see Willie Gay Jr., like you said, Nick Bolton.
Yeah.
We'll see Leo Chanel. We'll see George K. Brian Cook do something that we're like, we have not seen that in a few years.
Yeah.
You mentioned it with Tyrann Mathieu. His first 2 seasons here, he was physical, man.
Yeah.
I feel like we all have this, I don't want to say tainted view, but the last thing you saw from Tyrann Mathieu was him either throwing his hands up in the air or it was him not putting his nose in there.
Yep.
And we kind of forget how good he was those first 2 seasons. Frank Clark, almost to the same extent. Frank Clark was never great here in Kansas City, but he had some really good moments in the playoffs. He had some good moments in big-time situations. And so we thought he was this really good player. But before he came to Kansas City, I don't really think many people were saying Frank Clark is an elite pass rusher.
For sure.
He got an elite pass rusher type of contract. They traded him and high draft picks to bring him in, right?
Yeah.
But I think our expectations of Frank Clark may have been in the way of what he actually was. Do you think that's also fair to say?
Yeah, they not just the contract, but the Chiefs in their press conference said they thought that Frank Clark would be a top 5 defensive end in the NFL. That's what they said when they brought him in. That lays expectations on him, on a fan base that you could never meet. Okay. Frank Clark at his best was a 13-sack guy, I believe, in Seattle. We're talking top 5 guys, clear 15 just about every year. They get close to it every year. His best season was 13. And while I was more optimistic about him coming over, I'm seeing the errors in my ways. Like when you go back to his Seattle tape, he was a pure effort guy. And he didn't have to deal with as many athletic quarterbacks. It felt like that they kind of fell into his lap. You have cleanup sacks. He didn't
a souped up Mike Dana.
Yeah, like that's what he is. And it's hard because specifically when you talk about both of those guys, both from Michigan, they both played at Michigan. And typically when we think about Michigan defensive ends, even guys like Aiden Hutchinson, effort. That's you don't see the huge athletic guys. Now, I just lost my train of thought on who I was going to talk about, but regardless, David Ojabo, there it is. David Ojabo was the one exception to that rule who's been hugely athletic, and then he gets hurt. So these defensive ends, they're primarily based on effort. And you have the, Schwump mentions it here, his attitude. They were trying to change the culture. like we saw in
Yeah.
2018. The culture,
Mhm.
they wanted to bring that physical and the mentality that we don't have to stand aside when Derrick Henry comes to town. We can stop him. That was something that they did, and they did a good job at it. And then it just went away. So they're trying. It looks like right now the Chiefs are trying to correct some of the errors that they made in that judgment process and try to find guys that are always going to have that high motor, but also have some upside in the process.
Yeah, and I didn't have an issue, I guess, with bringing in guys who were physical, but what was given up and that contract. Again, it's always difficult to judge this on a one-off
Yeah.
because when you get a Super Bowl out of it, when you have this many AFC West continuation championships, you have so many AFC championships, or at least getting to the AFC championship game, it's tough to really complain, right? But
Yeah.
if you're just looking at the contract itself, Frank Clark, at least to me, that attitude, what he was brought in for, that motor, right? He was supposed to never stop. That motor has stopped. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
what it just looks like. We've got a few questions here. One from How About Those Chiefs? Is Frank Clark dealing with sickness? He looks thin. John F. says Frank Clark looks like Tom Hanks in Castaway. It looks like that one picture circulating Twitter. Frank Clark does look skinnier, right?
Yeah.
He looks like he has lost some weight. He still looks cut. He's obviously looks like an athlete, but he does look smaller. Is that something that you're worried about, or is that maybe a picture or something taken out of context?
I think that the picture that's been circulating is photoshopped. I think that someone
Okay.
took, because I've seen the video of him working out and he does look
Mhm.
leaner. He looks leaner. I'll give him that. And that might benefit him. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. If he can keep his physical strength the way where it was in the past couple of years and lose a little bit of the weight that maybe he had extra weight on, I don't know. The problem is that we don't ever get to see changes in players' weights from year to year on the site. Like, it's always
Mhm.
the same thing. And we have to assume what weight a player is playing at. So he could have been carrying bad weight last year. This could be his ideal weight. We don't really know. And also, weight fluctuates so much from, and I'll just point out, when was the video taken? Was it taken in
Sure.
March? Was it taken in April? Like, it's June. There, the professional athletes' weight training and way it fluctuates is so much different. It's almost like how an actor can lose so much weight for one movie and then completely put on a ton of weight for a next one in a short amount of time. They know how to do that, do both of those things. So I think that Clark probably is currently trying to get a little bit more of that bulk on in the process leading up to training camp. And then, weight is just such a fluctuating thing for them that it's hard to really know. But I do think we haven't heard anything about his stomach bug recently, but he could definitely still be dealing with it if it's a chronic
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just say it's something to at least keep an eye on, but I wouldn't sound the alarms yet on something like that. Even if he has lost weight, even if it's
Yeah.
not photoshopped, even if that is a real thing, how about those Chiefs says he has the video clip from that saying it's not photoshopped? He said it was taken this past weekend at his football camp in LA. Even if all that is
Okay.
true, okay, I'm not going to be worried,
Mhm.
extremely worried about that yet, just because, like you said, football players, their weight can fluctuate. Maybe he did want to get leaner, thinking that could give him some more speed, make him a little bendier. Uh, I'm just going to at least pump the brakes a little bit on that Frank Clark picture that
Yep.
is circulating. As far as OTAs are going at this point, how are you feeling? Like what you hear, like what you have seen? Where's your level at right here?
Trying to not get overworked by OTAs clips, like it's a tough process. We're all fiending for football, anything. So a minute you see Justin Ross catching a one-handed pass down the sideline, we all kind of lose our shit, right? We all just kind of like football,
We look like
football.
inflatable tube man at a used car dealership. We're all just sitting
Just
here like,
right,
woo.
right. Exactly. Like, that's what it is. But I'm content currently because it's hard to know. And a lot of these guys, you're not playing with pads, you're playing against air, and you just kind of we all get carried away. I do it too, and I've tried to hone myself. Like, I've tried to get more considerate and maybe be a little bit more optimistic about some players here and there, but OTAs are hard, man. They're especially because not everyone's there. So Mahomes hasn't been there. Sky Moore hasn't been practicing. He's been dealing with the injury. So is McCole Hardman. Right now, you're just kind of hoping that rookies, specifically maybe some newer veterans, are flashing. That's all you really want to see, them flash to the coaching staff and get out there, just get everything underneath them. Specifically for a guy like Justin Ross, he needs the reps. Okay.
Yeah.
Hurt all last year, dealt with his foot injury, which is difficult to recover from for receivers. Foot injuries linger. Like they are Sammy Watkins, guys. Like they linger. Like it's a thing. So I'm hoping that he just can get healthy and get his feet under him. So that's really all I'm looking for about OTAs, is seeing guys that are injured maybe get back on the field, practice here and there, and then guys that are on the field that have dealt with some injuries, just to get all of that rust kicked off.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Night Hunter on YouTube right now, one of his comments makes me laugh. Buying OTA hype is like buying flight insurance, then taking a train. Dude, I'm 100%
Oh, what's
with
up,
you.
Knight?
I think that's just, it's perfect. I mean, everyone is going to look good. And even if you look bad, I mean, Jamar Chase, right? He couldn't catch a football and everyone was freaking out. Yeah, look, we all look stupid now. So take everything with a grain of salt at this point. Take everything pretty much the Chiefs say with a grain of salt at this point. It's so tough. It's just so difficult to get a real good feel. You just want everyone healthy. That's all you want. You want people who can, especially the young guys, learning the playbook, learning the schemes. The Chiefs, we've heard from a lot of different people, players, coaching staff, opposing teams, very difficult, especially offensively. Andy Reid's playbook is one of the most difficult in the NFL. All you want is guys healthy, being out there and learning. Let's talk about the wide receivers. You and I have had some differing thoughts, right? You and I, we talked about on the radio show yesterday. But let's start with this. Who leads the group in yards? Obviously, we're not counting Travis Kelce. I think you and I would agree there, but he's tight end. We're no technicalities here, Daniel. Who leads the Chiefs wide receivers in yards?
Obviously, the caveat is that everyone stays healthy, optimistically. I will plant my flag in Mecole Hardman this year. I think that if they incorporate some of the routes that he ran as a rookie, some of the deeper over routes, get him on that Z rotation. If we go back to the Atlanta preseason game, last year, they did have him running that Tyreek Hill role as the Z receiver. I think that could be his way into that, being a little bit better of a route runner, knowing where to be on the field. This offseason is huge for him, getting on the same page with Patrick Mahomes, getting not just in the weight room, in my opinion, put on a little bit of weight, a little bit of good muscle, but being able to consistently know the playbook inside, outside, and knowing where you're supposed to be on the field. If he does that, I do think he has the talent to be the good lead guy in Kansas City with the most yards. But everything, the biggest reason that I think he will is because of knowledge of the offense. As much as Juju Smith-Schuster has done in his pre-Kansas City career, pre-injury career, I think Mecole's knowledge of the offense is, again, assuming that he's gotten on the same page with Patrick this offseason. It's all this is assumptions by now. We just have to assume. We don't have any other information. So I'm placing a lot of faith in the acceleration, the usage that we've seen the last half of the year from Mecole, mixed in with more Z aspects of the wide receiver position. I think that can get him there myself.
So I'm not going to be thoroughly upset you picked Mecole Hardman, because I think that you can almost go with a lot of different guys, because Mahomes has said this offense is looking like it's predicated on spreading the ball out. I've said it myself. I don't think any receiver gets over 1,000 yards. I think Travis Kelce does, but again, that's a tight end. I think Hardman will get maybe around 750, 800. I think he'll have a lot of the same things that happened last year towards the end of the season when they found the best role to put him in, aka those wide receiver screens, right?
Yeah.
Those were all basically plays to Mecole. It wasn't just, you run a route and then you're my third guy, I hit you. It's, no, this play is designed for Mecole Hardman. And I think it's going to limit his upside. I almost think Hardman, even as young as he is, even though we've seen some progression, I almost want to say he is what he is. He's not a great route runner, but that is something you can work on. I want to almost take a step back. I've been so optimistic in the past about Hardman. At some point I have to say, you know what, maybe this just is who he is, and let me wait until I see it. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is going to lead the Kansas City Chiefs as a wide receiver in receiving yards. I just think he's going to be targeted a lot. I think that Mahomes will find him as a check down guy. I know it's not a super bold take, but if I want to be honest, that's the way I think I'm going to go. I like MVS a lot. I like Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I think he's improved his game, but he is still such a unknown, right? He's such an unknown. And even though his measurables just are off the charts, right? He's like 6'4". He's extremely fast. I just, again, I want to see it. If he couldn't do it with Aaron Rodgers, what makes me think he's going to do it with Mahomes? Now you could say Devontae Adams dug into his target share, but Travis Kelce will as well. So it's a little bit of a wash. And then Sky Moore, he's a rookie. You know, I really like Sky Moore. I think he's a NFL-ready week one wide receiver. He's a great route runner. He's got massive hands, Johnny Benchian hands, right?
Oh, they're so big.
Like, it's crazy.
10.5-inch hands.
Dude is my size with just freaking baseball mitts for hands. But again, he's a rookie, and it takes a while for that to happen. So I know it's not the sexy pick, but I'm going with Juju.
Yeah, I think we're going to find out very early in the season how they plan on using. Actually, we're going to find out in training camp and the preseason how they're going to use Mecole Hardman. That's going to give us a clue. If it's just a bunch of gadget stuff, yeah, he's probably not going to lead the Chiefs in receptions and receiving yards. But this whole offense is going to distribute the ball, like you said, like Mahomes has mentioned. They want to get into a more distributive nature, which I think will benefit everybody. And specifically, it could really help Clyde Edwards-Helaire get to the ceiling that we've all hoped to see from him. I don't think he's going to ever be an elite running back type of prospect in the NFL, period. That's just, he doesn't have the speed to do that. But if you actually use him in the pass catching department, when you look at the guys behind him, he's got a pretty good shot at leading them in targets and receptions. I think that they can finally use his abilities properly. You have Juju and you have Mecole if you want to use him as a gadget department. You also have Travis Kelce to take away some of the attention, to bring some gravity to the middle of the field. Then you can really start to use Clyde a little bit in those passing situations. So I'm looking forward to that as well. He could be a surprise as maybe like the second or third leading receiver on the team. I wouldn't rule that out either. So there's a lot of guys on this team that could contribute. There's a lot of guys on this team that might not. And that's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. I think that most people are down on Marquez Valdes-Scantling being a guy because, again, he was, like you said, he was in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and just never really maybe got the opportunity to be the guy. He might have that opportunity here, but from what I've seen on film, he's not going to be given a very long leash. Let's just say that.
My thing here is, even though I might not be incredibly excited about one specific player, I think as a overall group, I am excited. I do think Sky Moore does things, and I do think that as a rookie, he might not be able to showcase what all he can do. Just it's tough in an Andy Reid system as a rookie to make a massive impact. Again, same thing with Mecole Hardman. I think while I'm not super enthused as him being this go out and get it, not 1,000-yard guy, he is useful in his role. He is useful in what he can do. MVS, same thing. MVS he can be a red zone threat. He is a guy who's extremely fast who can catch a bomb. Juju Smith-Schuster can do a lot of things well also. So while I'm not, maybe it's not Tyreek Hill, right? Yeah. We know that. We know it's not what the Chiefs were with the explosiveness of Tyreek Hill and when Sammy Watkins was healthy. But as far as top to bottom, there's a lot of versatility, which I think might be maybe getting overlooked, right? Even though you lost Tyreek Hill, the 2 through 4, 2 through 5, I think is better than the Byron Pringle, the Demarcus Robinson, that type of group.
Yeah, we're going to see how that is this year. Again, if Juju can come back and be reminiscent of what he was in 2020, which still isn't the player he was in 2018, then a wide receiver 1 with Antonio Brown on his opposite side, he can at least give you an option to create separation underneath. If he can do that, that's all you're looking for. If MVS could be, what's up?
I'm going to say really quickly, do you think, though, because with Juju Smith-Schuster, we know his best season was with Antonio Brown. Obviously, after that, it was a little disappointing, and then it was injuries. But do you think that Travis Kelce, even though he's a tight end, would allow Juju to have that sort of renaissance that he had with Antonio Brown?
I don't think so. Mostly because I think the athleticism is gone for a majority of the aspect. We don't know. He as soon as he had that year, he dropped off. He wasn't the same player. Why? Was it because of the offense? Was it because they started to run his route tree a little differently? Did he get injured before his massive injury? Like, what do we know? We don't really know
Well,
anything.
they rolled out Weekend at Bernie as their quarterback. That's what happened.
Well,
It was a
it happened
corpse.
after, but it was still he was better than he was the last 2 years. In 2019, the year after his great season, and it still wasn't there. So we'll find out. I'm very hopeful that he's at least what he was in 2020, because that is a guy that can play physically over the middle of the field and catch the ball and create a little bit of separation, which is all you're asking for. You're not asking him to be what he was in 2018, 2017. You're not asking for that. So that's really what it is, and I'm hoping that just the presence of Travis Kelce can kind of open everybody else up. And what this comes down to for me is the wide receiver group having versatile skill sets. Can Patrick Mahomes now elevate everybody? Because at times he did it last year. We saw it with Byron Pringle to an extent with Demarcus Robinson. But for the most part, he's funneled targets to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill all of his career. He's going to be asked now to be a more defensive reading, finding more holes in the zones that he has to kind of not trust players. He didn't like not trusting guys last year. He's going to have to be a little bit more open with that with the rookie to veterans, and then hoping that a running back in Clyde, so maybe somebody else can contribute to the offense. So he's kind of stepping into new waters as well. So he's going to be asked to carry more of a mental load in this offense than he ever has been before.
Before we get to Justin Ross, because I know a lot of people want to talk about Justin Ross, I want to hear your thoughts on Justin Ross. I want to talk first about two guys. One guy I feel like is getting hyped up a lot, and I feel like for no reason. And then one guy was drafted last year who no one is talking about. First off, Cornell Powell, 5th round draft pick last year. I was not excited about the draft pick when it happened. I think his upside to me, his peak, his ceiling is DeMarcus Robinson. That's fine, right? DeMarcus Robinson, as much as people like to rip on him, he's fine if he's your 5th guy, a guy who's a good blocker, does the little things well. Hopefully he doesn't run backwards like he did. But DeMarcus Robinson was a valuable member of this team for a while. Have you heard anything about Cornell Powell, and what do you think his future is here in Kansas City?
Not a damn thing. They have kept the lid absolutely tight on my guy. He is my guy, and it makes me
I had to throw that dig at you, because when he was drafted, I was like, why? What does he bring?
Part of it was I was so excited because I called it. Like I made a whole video about guys that could target on day 3. I talked about Cornell Powell and they drafted him. I was like, yes, one of the guys that I talked about. Like I was so excited. And then I let a 6-game sample size completely just ruin my entire aspect of being an unbiased film watcher. But I will say he has some speed. He's a 4.47 guy. He ran a 4.47 40. So I personally see his ceiling more of a Byron Pringle kind of guy who can give you an explosive play every now and then. If he can be, again, based off of absolutely no information, thank you, Kansas City, of his development in the offseason and before that, we don't have a damn clue. And it makes me so mad. They're so good at hiding these things and just keeping tight lips on it. So I'm more optimistic about him turning into a Byron Pringle. If he can be an end of the roster guy now, again, a late bloomer, a guy who didn't play because there was so much talent and just couldn't beat him out. He just wasn't that talented. But when he got on the field, he became Trevor Lawrence's safety valve. He threw the ball down the field all the time and he caught it. He would just get it. He would just find ways to catch the football. I think guys like that are important, and especially at the back end of the roster, not as your 2 or your 3. Mind you, that was the biggest problem with Byron Pringle. We would have been very happy if he was the 5 all of his career in Kansas City, but he was asked to be more than that, and it's just not his wheelhouse. So if you can get a Powell at the end of the roster that can contribute on special teams, can give you some reps every now and then, and just be in the spots you're supposed to be at when you need to be them, that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, that's how I felt with Demarcus Robinson. When he was asked to
Yeah.
be the number 3, you're sitting here screaming. But when he's your number 5, doing some of the little things like I mentioned, he was a very good run blocker, did a
Yep.
lot of things in space that really helped out. You just hated him running backwards. And when he's your number 3, that just gets magnified.
Yep.
Josh Gordon is the other name that I want to
Yep.
talk about before we get to Justin Ross. Josh Gordon is almost divisive name in Kansas City for a guy who's played like 6 games here. I wasn't super happy when they brought him in. I didn't mind it, right? I wasn't someone who was irritated they gave Josh Gordon another chance here. That part I'm fine with. But to me, the part that irritated me was more the fan base who was sitting here saying, oh, Josh Gordon's going to be like he was in Cleveland because Mahomes is throwing him the ball, this, that, and the other. He's not really been that guy since, 2015? 2015.
It's been so long. I've lost count. Like he's what he was in Seattle, even in New England, wasn't even a fraction. He was more of a fraction of the player he's ever been. Just he's a big body that you're hoping they can catch the ball in contested situations, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't.
It's like I'm fine with it. I just don't understand this hype train surrounding him. And now I keep hearing, well, now it's his second year in an Andy Reid system, and it just comes down, at least to me. I guess I'm more cautious when it comes to former stars like this. Sky Moore, I'm very happy with. I'm very excited to see what he can become. George Karlaftis, extremely excited on the defensive side of the ball. But guys like Josh Gordon, I want to pump the brakes and say it's a wait and see for me. Honestly, I don't know if he makes the roster. I don't. If it were me, I don't think he makes the team. He was dropping the ball. He looked lost at times on the field. Maybe the second year in the system helps him out, but that doesn't help the hands. Like, that's not – if you have bricks for hands, that ain't going to help. I don't know if it was just the time off. I don't know if it was rust. But even the touchdown that he scored, everyone kept sitting here saying, well, look, he scored a touchdown. Anyone could have scored that touchdown. The Chiefs did that on purpose.
Yes,
that was a drawn-up play to make it look like Josh Gordon, in my opinion, did something. I have nothing against Josh Gordon. I love that he get another chance. I'm fine they brought him in. I just don't feel like he is this guy who's going to take this receiving core to the next level. I just don't know what he brings. Let's get to Justin Ross now. I know a lot of folks want to talk about Justin Ross. I'll start with you first. Where is your, I guess, confidence level in Justin Ross, and do you think he makes the 53?
I need to see him on the field with pads now before I can actually make a decision, because we're talking about a player whose best season was in 2019. He's dealt with injuries ever since, period. Okay. So the idea that he's just going to come in and be what he was, that's most people's that's what I think I've seen most of. Like people don't like the fact that I'm divisive a little bit about it. The fact that I'm not confident he can be that player. And I get a lot of crap for it because I have this opinion that he might not be the same player that he was 3 years ago. And most people are like, he's just going to ball. Okay. If he was going to ball, he would have been drafted. I'll tell you that right now. If NFL teams were super confident that he was going to just ball out, this injury was behind him, they would have drafted him. First off. Second off, as a UDFA and as a guy who's dealt with injuries just about every single year since he was in high school, there's a problem. And foot injuries for wide receivers can be extremely finicky and difficult to ever get back the athleticism that you had, specifically in your short area, your ankle flexion, and the ability to create natural separation on your route running. It's very difficult. You might not ever get that back. I will say this. I never, ever root against players, ever. Josh Gordon, hope he balls out. Justin Ross, make the roster. Please have a 1,000-yard season. Please help the Chiefs out. Anybody, do whatever you can. I will not place blind faith in the fact that he can be a 2019 receiver again. I can't. And the biggest thing, I joke around about the videos in his OTAs, like, oh, I'm all in. Like, see a catch. I just quote the tweet. Like I say, I'm all in, guys. Like I will have fun with it. I will, but I can't in good conscience tell you that he's going to, one, make the roster, And then when he does, he's just going to be the number one receiver on this team. I hope that people don't take this as a shot at whoever does. Have all the faith in the world that you want to. Be confident in these players. That's your prerogative. You're a fan. I want you to do that. I want you to be enthusiastic about players that are on the Kansas City. That's awesome. You be as happy as you want. My own personal feelings have to try to at least parse it out. I did a poor job of doing that with Cornell Powell last year. Poor job. Poor. Very poor. And I'm trying to learn from that mistake.
But no, I'm with you. It's not fun if we just sit here and tell everyone and blow smoke up your ass, just saying every receiver's catching 1,000 yards. Mahomes is throwing for 6,000. He's going to break every single record. Chiefs are going undefeated. Mm-hmm. That's being a fan. We're out here trying to break down what we see. We're trying to use our best judgment. And my best judgment is, unless Justin Ross plays special teams, I could see it being an uphill battle to him making the roster. Yep. I know the Chiefs medical staff cleared him, right? And that's what Brett Veach said. He goes, they know more than me. And let's be real, they know more than us, obviously.
Yep, obviously.
So if they cleared him, maybe that means they think that he is good to go and play special teams. But if you are a fifth, sixth receiver on this team, you're probably playing special teams in some aspect. And I just don't know if that spinal injury, I don't know if that foot injury, which is the injury I bring up a lot because I'm with you. I think the foot injury is getting completely overlooked. I don't know if those would keep him from playing special teams. And if that's the case, that could keep him off the roster. The one thing I will say, the Chiefs have so much secondary help. There's so many secondary players, and we have seen the Chiefs try to get more physical. I don't know if that's a step in the Chiefs saying, we're going to try and put more secondary pieces on special teams. And maybe if that's the case, Justin Ross can make the roster as the fifth option and play wide receiver without playing special teams. That's the one thing I would say.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, when we talk about a return guy, for example, Byron Pringle was that last year. I think Pacheco is going to make this roster as a returner, which would take some problems off of the wide receiver, needing McCole Hardman to be a returner, needing a fifth or sixth receiver to be. I think you can have Pacheco be that. So it takes some necessity away from having to play special teams for some of these wide receivers. So it could allow Ross to make it as the fifth or sixth guy. And again, like you said, not have to worry about it.
All right. Before we get out of here, not Chiefs. Have you seen Top Gun?
I have. The first one or the second one?
The second one.
I have not seen the second one.
Okay, I feel like you and I are on the same page here then. Everyone keeps saying I look like Miles Teller, the dude who played, is it Rooster? With the mustache.
Yes,
now.
I believe that's true. And I've seen the clips of him, so I think that there's a little bit of resemblance. I don't think it's like too much, but there's a little bit there.
I was kind of thinking a skinny Andy Reid. That's what I was going for. Like pre-cheesesteak, pre-punt pass kick when he was 13, maybe like a 6-year-old Andy Reid, because I'm pretty sure he came out with just a fickle walrus stash.
I think that makes sense. You're going for it. I think you're there, but if you want to really commit, you'd have to gain like 10 pounds at least just to really hit
10? How much do you think I weigh, Dan? What do you think I'm doing under here? Oh my gosh, 10 pounds, Dan.
I said commit to it. If you want to commit to it,
10 pounds,
you want to.
You just called me a thick fella. You just said I was sturdy. You know what? If I just need 10 pounds, put me at edge.
Oh, is that right? Well, you seem to misunderstand how heavy I am, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I know.
Daniel
I don't look it. I carry
6'5", like 270.
I said I'm 265. Which I am.
5 pounds. Okay.
Yeah, sure. It's factually true. This is a fact. And I measured myself. I'm 6'4.5". So
okay, we'll do a combine. We'll do a combine. You, me, Matt Verderam, Patrick Allen, Matt Connor. We'll do a combine. That sounds fun to me. Guys, we appreciate all you guys who comment, who watch this, who check us out. So that honestly means the world. Everyone in Discord who comments, you guys can always join. It's in the YouTube channel. It's right down there. You'll see it in the not the comments, but the details. You'll see how to join there. I'm not technologically savvy. Come on. No guy with a mustache is technologically savvy. I'm 78. I mowed my lawn today. But Daniel Harms, if you want to follow him, you can at InHarmsWay19 on Twitter. honestly, some of the best breakdowns in the game. His Twitter account's fantastic. If you want to see anywhere from a 5-second clip to a great breakdown, he has that all. You can find him also on RGR Football as well as Fantasy Football Astronauts. Guys, we're out of here. Thursday, I'm pretty sure Patrick Allen and Matt Verderin will be here. We appreciate you guys, all your support. If you want to leave us a comment, you can anywhere you get your podcasts. Until Thursday, we are out.